Imagine for a moment that every act of kindness you've extended has been quietly eroding your own boundaries, your sense of self, and your ability to thrive. What if I told you that being kind to everyone without discrimination might actually be the biggest obstacle standing between you and your growth? That's not to say kindness itself is bad, far from it. But what if indiscriminate kindness is a form of surrender, a silent permission slip for others to take from you without giving back? Our brain's neural circuits are wired to seek social connection and to be generous. It's part of our survival mechanism. But here's the twist. These same circuits can be hijacked by chronic overkindness, leading to burnout, resentment, and depletion. When you say yes to everyone, your brain's reward system floods with temporary dopamine hits. But the long-term consequence is the erosion of your dopamine baseline, the fundamental neurochemical that drives motivation, focus, and resilience. Kindness without boundaries is like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. You're giving away precious energy, time, and mental resources, often to people who don't reciprocate or even appreciate it. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and self-regulation, starts to lose control, overwhelmed by the constant demand to please others. This leads to emotional fatigue, impaired judgment, and even physical stress responses. But there's a way forward, cultivating what I call strategic kindness. This means choosing wisely where and to whom you extend your kindness, anchored in self-respect and clarity of purpose. Your brain's limbic system craves fairness and respect, and when kindness is paired with strong personal boundaries, it actually enhances your social standing and personal well-being. So, instead of a blanket kindness that leaves you vulnerable, adopt a selective generosity that preserves your neural health, sharpens your motivation, and protects your emotional integrity. This isn't cold-heartedness. It's an act of deep respect for yourself and for the people truly deserving of your energy. Your brain thrives on balance, the dopamine reward of kindness paired with the serotonin instability of self-control. When you stop being kind to everyone indiscriminately, you reclaim control over your brain chemistry, your focus, and ultimately, your life trajectory. This is the neuroscience-backed key to not just surviving, but thriving in a world that constantly demands more from you. Imagine you're handing out pieces of yourself like coins in a fountain, wishing well, hoping for something back. But what if those coins are actually fragments of your core identity slipping away? When you are kind to everyone without discernment, you gradually erode your personal boundaries. Boundaries are not just social constructs, they are neurobiological realities deeply embedded in your brain's architecture. The brain continuously maps and maintains a sense of self through a delicate balance of internal signals and external interactions. Overextending kindness to everyone blurs this map, confusing your brain about where you end and others begin. This confusion triggers a cascade of neural consequences. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for maintaining your executive functions like self-regulation and decision-making, struggles to draw a firm line between your needs and others' demands. Meanwhile, the limbic system, the emotional core of your brain, may respond by heightening stress and anxiety, as it senses that your personal space and resources are being invaded. Over time, this neurobiological mismatch wears down your sense of agency, making you more susceptible to burnout and emotional exhaustion. So, this is not just about being emotionally tired. It's about the very fabric of how your brain defines your identity and your capacity to operate effectively in the world. Without strong boundaries, kindness can become a form of self-neglect, diminishing your ability to sustain meaningful connections, focus on your goals, and preserve your mental health. Recognizing this neurobiological reality is the first step toward reclaiming your brain's natural capacity for balanced, purposeful kindness. When you engage in acts of kindness, your brain releases dopamine, a powerful neurotransmitter linked to reward and motivation. This chemical surge feels good, reinforcing the behavior and encouraging you to repeat it. But here's the crucial detail: dopamine operates on a delicate balance. When kindness is given indiscriminately, the brain's dopamine system can become overstimulated, leading to a phenomenon known as receptor downregulation. Simply put, your brain starts to dial down its sensitivity to dopamine because it's being flooded too often with these good signals. This means that the very kindness that initially made you feel energized and connected can, over time, blunt your motivational circuits. Your baseline level of dopamine decreases, making it harder to feel joy, enthusiasm, or drive, not just in social interactions, but in all areas of life. This neurochemical adaptation is why people who overextend kindness without boundaries often report feelings of emptiness, fatigue, and diminished motivation. Understanding this neurochemical process is vital. It explains why kindness isn't a limitless resource for your brain, and why giving it without strategy can lead to an internal state where the rewards start to vanish. The goal is to preserve your dopamine system by reserving kindness for situations and people that truly merit it, thereby sustaining your brain's natural capacity for motivation, focus, and emotional resilience. When you constantly say yes to everyone, your brain is effectively putting itself into a state of chronic overdrive. Every time you agree to meet someone's request or obligation without pause, your nervous system activates stress responses primarily through the release of cortisol, the body's main stress hormone. While cortisol is essential for acute stress management, chronic elevation can impair cognitive function, disrupt sleep, and weaken immune responses. This means your body and brain are paying a heavy biological price for relentless people-pleasing. Moreover, this continuous giving without limits depletes your mental and emotional reserves. The brain's energy currency, glucose, is finite and must be allocated wisely. When you spread your attention and effort too thin by overcommitting, your prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for planning, impulse control, and executive function, loses its capacity to regulate emotions effectively. This leads to cognitive fatigue, making it harder to make decisions, maintain focus, or regulate your emotional responses. In essence, saying yes to everyone becomes a form of self-imposed stress that chips away at your resilience. Instead of feeling energized and fulfilled, you become drained, overwhelmed, and vulnerable to burnout. The brain thrives on balance between challenge and rest, giving and receiving. Without that balance, your capacity to operate at your highest level diminishes, underscoring why indiscriminate kindness can be so costly to your overall well-being. Your prefrontal cortex is the command center of your brain, the region that governs self-control, decision-making, and the ability to weigh consequences before acting. When you constantly feel the pressure to please everyone, this critical brain area becomes overwhelmed by an unrelenting flood of social demands. Each request or expectation requires it to engage, evaluate, and often suppress impulses to maintain harmony. Over time, this relentless activation wears down its capacity, impairing your executive functions. What happens neurologically is that the prefrontal cortex, which relies heavily on a balanced supply of neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine, begins to function less efficiently under constant social load. This inefficiency manifests as difficulty in making clear decisions, reduced impulse control, and compromised emotional regulation. Your ability to say no or prioritize your own needs diminishes because the brain's control system is taxed beyond its optimal limits. This neurological overload creates a feedback loop. The more you try to satisfy everyone, the harder it becomes to regulate your own responses, making you more reactive and less intentional. Your brain's natural ability to create boundaries weakens, leading to a state where kindness becomes automatic and indiscriminate, not because it's a choice, but because your regulatory circuits are fatigued. Recognizing this neurobiological reality is key to reclaiming your cognitive control and ensuring your kindness serves you as much as it serves others. When kindness is given without discernment, especially to those who don't reciprocate or appreciate it, your brain's emotional centers start to register something profound, a violation of expected social fairness. The limbic system, particularly the amygdala and anterior cingulate cortex, is finely tuned to detect discrepancies between effort and reward in social interactions. When you repeatedly extend kindness and it's met with indifference, exploitation, or ingratitude, these areas activate stress and pain circuits, neurobiological signals similar to physical discomfort. This chronic mismatch creates a state of emotional fatigue and, eventually, resentment. The brain's default mode network, which integrates self-referential thoughts and emotions, begins to process these experiences as a threat to your social value and personal safety. Over time, this neural pattern can hardwire a negative bias, where you start anticipating exploitation rather than genuine connection, leading to withdrawal or bitterness. Importantly, this is not just a psychological reaction. It's a fundamental survival mechanism wired into your brain's architecture. The emotional pain of unreciprocated kindness serves as a warning to recalibrate your social investments. Without recognizing and respecting this neural feedback, you risk perpetuating cycles of self-sacrifice that erode your emotional well-being and undermine your capacity for authentic, healthy relationships. Strategic kindness is about harnessing the brain's natural mechanisms to maximize the benefits of generosity while minimizing the costs. When you selectively choose where and to whom you extend kindness, you engage higher order cognitive processes in the prefrontal cortex that weigh the value and impact of your actions. This deliberate choice activates reward circuits more sustainably, allowing dopamine release to remain balanced rather than becoming depleted. By setting intentional boundaries, you protect your neural resources, your attention, emotional energy, and motivation, so they are not squandered on interactions that don't serve your growth or well-being. This selective generosity also signals to your brain's social networks that your kindness is meaningful and earned, which strengthens the release of serotonin, a neurotransmitter associated with feelings of satisfaction, safety, and social bonding. Moreover, strategic kindness helps calibrate your brain's prediction models about social exchanges, fostering relationships where reciprocity and respect are more likely to flourish. Your limbic system learns to associate kindness with positive outcomes, reinforcing neural pathways that promote resilience and emotional health. In essence, this approach transforms kindness from a depleting habit into a regenerative practice that fuels your motivation, focus, and deeper connections with others. When you establish strong boundaries, your brain's limbic system, the emotional center responsible for processing social cues like fairness and respect, responds in a powerful way. The limbic system is constantly evaluating your interactions, scanning for signals that indicate whether you are being valued or taken advantage of. Clear boundaries act as a form of nonverbal communication that says, "I respect myself and I expect the same from you." This activates neural circuits linked to social status and safety, particularly in regions like the ventromedial prefrontal cortex and the striatum. By asserting boundaries, you trigger a neurochemical cascade that increases serotonin in release, which not only enhances feelings of well-being and confidence, but also solidifies your position within social hierarchies. This sense of respect from yourself and others reduces anxiety and creates a stable internal environment where your brain can operate at peak efficiency. The brain prefers predictable social interactions where fairness is maintained, and boundaries create that predictability. Without boundaries, your limbic system experiences chronic uncertainty and stress, which can undermine your social standing and diminish your ability to connect authentically. In contrast, boundaries reinforce your brain's internal models of fairness and respect, elevating your social presence and fostering relationships built on mutual appreciation rather than exploitation or imbalance. This neurobiological reinforcement makes strong boundaries essential, not just for your mental health, but for your social and emotional thriving. Selective generosity sharpens your brain's focus and motivation by aligning your energy with purposeful actions. When kindness is distributed thoughtfully, your dopamine system responds more robustly because the reward feels earned and meaningful rather than routine or obligatory. This enhances your capacity for sustained attention and goal-directed behavior, as dopamine is the key neurotransmitter that drives motivation and reinforces habits. At the same time, protecting your emotional integrity through selective generosity means you avoid the neurochemical drain caused by overextending yourself. The brain's stress systems, primarily governed by the hypothalamic, pituitary, adrenal HPA axis, remain balanced, preventing cortisol from reaching levels that impair cognitive function and emotional regulation. This balance supports a stable mood and resilience in the face of challenges. By consciously choosing where to invest your kindness, you create a neural environment that supports clarity, energy, and emotional stability. Your prefrontal cortex can engage fully, making better decisions about social interactions and personal goals. Ultimately, this leads to a virtuous cycle. Focused generosity reinforces motivation, which sustains your ability to be kind in ways that truly matter, preserving your mental resources and deepening your connections. Balancing kindness with self-control taps into the intricate dance between two critical neurotransmitters, dopamine and serotonin. Dopamine drives the anticipation and reward of giving kindness, fueling motivation and the desire to connect. Serotonin, on the other hand, stabilizes mood, promotes feelings of safety, and supports social cohesion. When these systems are in harmony, your brain achieves an optimal state where generosity feels fulfilling rather than exhausting. If kindness is given indiscriminately, dopamine circuits can become overstimulated, leading to a blunted reward response and decreased motivation. At the same time, without boundaries, serotonin levels may drop, undermining your sense of well-being and social stability. This imbalance results in emotional fatigue, decreased resilience, and impaired cognitive function. However, when you pair kindness with intentional self-control, knowing when to say yes and when to say no, you preserve this delicate neurochemical balance. Self-control engages the prefrontal cortex to regulate impulses, preventing dopamine overload and supporting steady serotonin in release. This neurochemical synergy enhances your capacity for sustained focus, emotional regulation, and authentic social connection, transforming kindness from a draining act into a regenerative process that supports your long-term mental and emotional health. Reclaiming control over your kindness habits is fundamentally about taking back the reins of your brain's regulatory systems. When kindness is extended indiscriminately, you relinquish control over your dopamine and cortisol levels, leaving your brain vulnerable to fluctuations that undermine motivation and increase stress. But by consciously choosing where and when to be kind, you engage the prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive hub, to modulate these neurochemical systems effectively. This intentional modulation restores balance to your brain chemistry, stabilizing dopamine levels that drive your motivation and focus while keeping cortisol in check to prevent chronic stress. As a result, your cognitive resources are preserved and your emotional resilience is strengthened. This state of neurochemical equilibrium allows you not only to meet your daily challenges with clarity and energy, but also to cultivate meaningful, reciprocal relationships that further enhance your well-being. In this way, controlling your kindness isn't about limiting generosity. It's about optimizing your brain's function to thrive, not just survive. It empowers you to be kind in ways that truly matter, protecting your mental health, sharpening your focus, and amplifying your capacity to contribute positively to the world around you.